And okay, so we have Courtney and Carell, let's say the directors from Nectapo, and I want to go ahead and pass the light over to Maverick Lucas so that they can go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you again today. I'm Courtney Streak. And I'm Carell Hall. And we are members of the Nanacoke Tribe. And we are excited to share our work with you in the Three Sisters Garden. And saying my name gave me a panic attack alone, so I'm going to use my cheat sheet. Where the Nanacoke Tribe is based in Sussex County, Delaware, is also one of the fastest developing regions of the nation. And I consider this the second wave of colonization because as farms are being soaked up and forests are being uprooted and developments are going in, our communities are yet again at risk of being disconnected from the natural world. And so in 2020, my partner John and I created Native Roots Farm Foundation, which we call NRFF for short, because Native Roots Farm Foundation is a tongue twister. And this is our mission. We are reclaiming, cultivating, and celebrating Native relationships with land, plants, and community for the next 7 generations. And while we are working to steward land and create a public hockey hakam, which is the Lenape word for field or garden, we are growing and rematriating native plants and fruits, and identifying plants in the Nanacoke and Lenape languages, and restoring indigenous ecological knowledge and uplifting indigenous sovereignty. And we did that this past growing season. In 2024, we formed a partnership with my high school, St. Andrew's School, which is in Delaware, as well as the Experimental Farm Network and the Seed Farm at Princeton. And we were growing Lenape and Nanacoke varieties of the Three Sisters, corn, beans, and squash. And sure. Oh, thanks.
And so this spring, we were able to bring this Three Sisters Garden to light. And so so we brought some images so you can see the journey that our garden took. And so the center image here is of us preparing to plant our blue corn. And this is a Lenape blue corn variety. And something very special about this particular, these particular kernels that were planted in the garden was a few years prior, the corn that was providing the seed for this garden was being grown at Princeton at the seed farm. And there were many Lenape community members from many different communities, some from Ramapo, some coming down from the Munsee communities in Ontario, as well as from Stockbridge and Nanacoke. And they came together to actually select the seeds from that crop that would later come to be planted in this garden here. And so we are growing the plants in these traditional mounds. And a benefit to the mounds is that you can plant things in them earlier because the soil is warmer faster, so you can plant things earlier in spring. And it also helps to aerate the soil a little bit better so it's not compacted. And also when you're actually physically in the garden, you're not scrambling all over everything that you planted as well, so it's practical in that sense. And so we were able to come together with students from the St. Andrew's School, as well as Nanacoke and Lenape community members, to come together to plant these seeds. And so you can, sorry, I'll go back. Oh, no, you're good. No, you can go back to the next one. And so throughout the summer, we spent so much time nurturing this garden. And you can see here in images, we have the corn beginning to grow, as well as some images of the beans that were planted. So in the garden, we planted 2 different Lenape corn varieties. You planted the Lenape blue corn as well as the Lenape white Puam corn. And for fun, we also planted a couple of popcorn varieties. So we planted a glass gem popcorn, which originates from Cherokee country, as well as a Dakota black popcorn as well. And then we also planted 3 Lenape bean varieties, which are our blue Shakamaxon bean and a purple King Sussin bean, which are both Lenape, they look like black beans, as well as a Canna Freeman bean, which is a lighter speckled bean, kind of looks a little bit more like a pinto bean. And then our last sister, squash, we were able to plant 2 different Nanticoke squash varieties. The first one being a Maycock squash, which is a bit more of a summer squash Nanticoke variety, and then a Nanticoke witcher squash as well. And around the perimeter of the garden, we also planted sunflowers. And you can see here in the center image, one of the sunflowers actually bloomed in a heart shape. And that for us, it was really symbolic of these plants being Sac homes in their own land and being nurtured by our communities and by our people. And so it was a really beautiful sight to see this. And you can see our corn was very happy. This was a very difficult season for a lot of people who were farming. There was a long drought, as you know, and a lot of the crops that many people grew at different places did not do so well. But our corn and our beans thrived in the spaces. They recognized that they were home.
Yeah. And so we planted nearly 250 mounds on less than a quarter acre of land. And the garden flourished. And at the end of the season, on that very small space, we harvested approximately 17 bushels of corn, 8 bushels of beans, and 3 bushels of squash. They really suffered during drought. But that is the Puem corn on the left. That is the blue corn harvest in the center. Each row of corn harvested about a bushel. And we got a surprise visitor of Huitlacoche, which is a fungus that grows only on organic corn. So that said, this corn can support so many different life forms. It is so powerful and so beautiful. And most farmers think that Huitlacoche is a pest. It's a terrible thing because it destroys their crops. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful and edible and nutritious. And in November, we all came back together, tribal members, high school students, summer interns from Princeton, and we reunited with these crops, with these foods, with these medicines, with these relatives, and they were the starring guest at our lunch. And they nurtured us for the first time in generations, if not centuries. The beans, the Lenape blue corn that we harvested, we ground, and we were able to share some bags. We've distributed about 125 bags since November. And that was made into a blue corn cookie as well as a blue corn cornbread. What am I missing?
And as we were distributing the bags of cornmeal to the community members, as Courtney said, 125 bags. And these went out to not just our Nanticoke community members, but to our other Indigenous relatives and neighbors, as well as I was able to set some up to our other displaced Lenape communities. So the folks who are now up in Ontario and the folks who are out in Wisconsin, you were able to send this blue cornmeal bag out to them. And so thinking about those same people who in the beginning, a few years ago, had helped to select the seeds for this garden are now receiving the cornmeal from this. And we are very excited to continue to expand these efforts as well in the future. And so this is our ongoing journey with our Three Sisters Garden, and we are getting ready to do it all over again this year, and we're really excited for at the planting season and being able to respect more and more of our relatives with our own foodways. Zaishi.
Beautiful. Thank you for showing us, what's possible, as well as showing us, here, I got it. Showing us that when you go out on a limb, Mother Earth goes to meet you there. And that, you had so much stuff you were trying for the first time. And then that sunflower came to say, yep, good job, you did it. So it's a very inspiring story to see the ways in which we can just plant that seed in literal terms and relearn how to be in relationship with the soil. I'm also keenly interested in the trees, the hickory nuts, the black walnuts, the chestnuts, the pawpaws, the service asparagus, all the tree relatives that used to bear so much food for the people as well, and remembering our ancient agroforestry ways, which were dependent on not only growing these trees, but spacing them really widely and burning in between to keep the meadows going and the ashes of the grass fires go back into the soil. And there's so many accounts of Lenape peoples burning in the colonial diaries. Oh, the Indians are burning again, the Indians are burning again, the Indians are always burning, burning the grasses to reduce catastrophic fire risk, because when you burn a lot, you help the fuel loads stay down, and also creating those nutrient-dense grasses in the wake of those little gentle burns that attract the deer and other herbivores to the area. And also help with traveling. They said it was so easy to travel in Northeast United States because Native folks had made these beautiful meadows everywhere and old growth trees around there. Very few trees per acre, they said, maybe 13 trees per acre, spacing the trees widely so that they could really have enough sunlight and nutrients and water to thrive and to be a tree. And that verging, it eliminates any little saplings that will overcompete with the old growths that you want to now be the stars of the acre. But it's a beautiful, beautiful story, so thank you so much for sharing. And now we're from Nate, who supports a lot with the seeds and caneberry seeds as usual, so we'll pass it over to you, Fitu.
Well, it's a real honor to be with you all again today. My name is Nate Kleinman, and I'm a part of Experimental Farm Network and the JAMA Cooperative Farming Alliance, also in NOPA, New Jersey, the Northeast Organic Farming Association. And it's been such a privilege to get to work with folks like Courtney and Karel, like Chief Man and Mikey, on so many beautiful projects. I want to put in context a little bit some of the seeds that you saw on the screen there. Some of those seeds were really perilously close to being lost, but for some seed keepers in various corners of this country, some in this region, some as far away as Kentucky, have been maintaining these seeds, and thankfully we get them back to the communities here. In fact, actually, one of the beans that was featured there, the Muncie wampum bee, we've recently learned that traces back to at least it was passed to a white man in the 1930s by the Cuddeback family. And I don't know if you'd have relatives with that name still, but they're in the Minnesink area along the border of New Jersey and New York. And that's the bean that many of you got a year ago when we gathered. This year I have some packets of the Maypok squash that Karel mentioned. This is the Danticoke summer squash, which was traditionally spiral cut in summer and then hung to dry, so it would be a staple food throughout the winter. But the squash can also be treated like a winter squash, something like spaghetti squash. And if you plant this entire packet, you'll see that every plant looks different because indigenous people were not breeding for uniformity, for shippability, and for everything to look nice on a supermarket shelf. your ancestors were breeding these things for resilience and that diversity in the face of all the stresses that have constantly existed for farmers, different pests, extreme weather, droughts, have always existed, but of course are accelerating now. And so the diversity that exists in a packet of seeds like this, it's really critical for all of us to be able to survive what's coming. And you'll see some of these. This is actually one selection from the original population that came from an elder named Fanny Johnson in the 1980s, who gave the seeds really was Weaver, who was a white Quaker seed saver from Pennsylvania. And he got all these seeds and he started trying to select different varieties out of the population and say, well, this looks like one that I saw a picture of in an old botanical print from the 1700s. So we tried to select in that direction. And we've been trying to bring those different selections all together into the original population. That's what Dr. Weaver was given by Fanny Johnson, who told him that she didn't trust that anyone in her community appreciated those seeds enough. And so it's really beautiful that there are people in the community who do understand the value and the importance of these seeds and the real the power that lives in these seeds and the connection to people who have lived here for thousands and thousands of years. I have some other seeds, including a few from that connected to my own personal heritage. My people come from Eastern Europe. We have some elderberries from Eastern Europe that are more actually from Ukraine, where some of my ancestors come from. And the elderberries there are technically the same species. The botanists say it's the same species as the wild elderberries that grow here, but the ones in Europe grow more tree-like, and they have more, the flowers have more flavor and are used to make traditional drinks there. But I'm happy to share some of those seeds. And we also have a bag of seeds. Mind you and I were just nibbling on a few, though we can't do too much of that. This is all we have. But this is a seed that was shared with me by Vivian Sansor from the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library. And it's a seed that she collected in a market in Bethlehem in the West Bank. It's a butternut squash, though. That's a squash that originated in this region, somewhere in probably northeast U.S., and was brought to Palestine and adapted to the climate there. So this is a much shorter season butternut than the average butternuts you'll grow. It's a much more drought adapted, and the seeds are really tasty but delicious. And so I need to find some Ziploc bags to divvy that one up a bit more. But yeah, please do see me later. And again, it's a real honor and privilege to be here. Thank you all for welcoming.
Yeah, surely everyone here feeds leave in a pack of seeds, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to try. We really, really encourage people to put seeds in the ground. It's hilarious. I have a PhD in food systems, but I'm like a terrible farmer. But I'm working on it, and so if anyone wants to join me on my my beginner's quest this spring, I'm going to be planting this spring as well. So please join me in that. I think really, obviously the local indigenous seeds are preference to local indigenous peoples here, but too is enough seed for every single person, regardless of your background. So please leave with a packet of seeds. And now we're going to eat some lunch, which we're really excited about. And it's more. I need to take this moment to thank the Duke Forest community for hosting today's event. We really appreciate the space. They've also been generous enough to lend us their chef. And so Chef Foran prepared the meal for all of you, and she just recently went out west and learned from some indigenous communities out west about what they're preparing and cooking. So inspired by that she has come back and has booked you lunch. So thank you very much for hanging with us all morning and take a break for lunch, share some ideas. And, you know, I think very few people in this room really realize what a gift Nate Klein is to our community, and we're so grateful for everything he does and how he's helping us to restore our connection with the seeds that are native to our region. And everybody who grows knows that you can always ask Nate a question, and if he doesn't know the answer, he'll find out the answer for you. And he's just so phenomenal. So thank you, Nate, for being here as for bringing back all these seeds brought. The video is across the lobby, so just go through the lobby, and then, or if you're from our relative and on the Duke, when we get back. So enjoy your lunch, and we're gonna get back around of our collective local knowledge about foods and the ways that our ancestors, or your ancestors really, would create abundance. So we kind of were looking backward last time, looking into the past, taking stock of our knowledge. And I kind of feel like this gathering, we're looking forward into the future. And, you know, what do we as a community want to do? So we have a few prompts, a few questions. We're going to split into groups of 5. And of course, the local indigenous voices within each circle are definitely what we're after and what we're premising. But it definitely, everyone's welcome to participate in their small circle, of course. And then we're going to all report out. We're going to once again write a bunch of words on the whiteboard. But don't worry, I'll handle that part. And just kind of see, you know, what we're looking towards in the future. But I think we're finally ready to go, if you're ready to go. So Winona has very generously agreed to come all the way out here. She flew out here from San Francisco yesterday, where she was spoiling her granddaughter and taking care of her and having a great time. So she took a very, very, very long flight across Turtle Island to get here last night. And so we're really grateful that you came out, and we're just really honored. So please give a welcome to Winona LaDuke.
I'm very honored to be here with my relatives, because the Lenape and the Delaware people are cousins. And so I'm from a little further west. And so I'm very honored to be here with you all. And so as I was thinking about, you know, this time, I think about our language, and all of us are working on our language, or remembering our language. And our work, Idunjaba Oma Aking, I'm here from this land. Idunjaba Oma Aking, and Aking means the land to which the people belong, which I think is really an important construct. It's not private property, it's not somebody else's land. And Inda King Amin, the very land to which I belong, the very land to which I belong. And so I think about how our language forms our relationship to place, and how important it is to reaffirm that. And, you know, in this moment in time, which is a moment of a lot of chaos in larger worlds, a lot of people need to ground. They need to find that Inda King Amin, the very land to which they belong. And I was just at this meeting of very wealthy people, and they were all saying, we gotta change the paradigm, we gotta change the system, we gotta change. I was like, oh, I'm so relieved you've come to your senses, you know. But that's, you know, I think people see that, they see that. And so this is really a moment for us to really, you know, step up, but be really present for our land. Hey, how do I change that? Oh, Tom, you didn't
do it for you.
Okay, good. That's fine. Okay, so Sequin Budaboshin, spring is coming. And I was a little late because, of course, I was out there looking at all the plants and looking, you know, talking about seeds and stuff. But, you know, this is Christy Belcourt piece, which is New Beginnings. And I think that all of us who are farmers, we know that each spring you have an opportunity to start anew. And I think that whole cyclical teaching that is a land-based teaching is so restorative and important to all of us in the world that we live in. But now is the time. It's kind of a quiet time. And I'm not quite ready to bring out all the seeds, because once they go, It's full on. I'd be so busy. And but I traveled with my little seed catalogs, and then I picked up all kinds of seeds here and on my journey out west. So I'm very excited about what is coming. So let me show you a couple pictures about where I'm from, and then okay, this is where you go ahead. And then he's gonna figure it out. The technology people.
You got the wine shop.
But I come from the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. We garden an entire landscape, which is, I think, what everybody does. My garden is, I'm so sorry, I'm like wandering back and forth and trying to say, it's just like, I'll try to stand still for a moment. But, where we are from, it is starting to wake up. Okay. You'll stand over. Because I'll never slow here. I'll stand. Thank you for giving me a little guidance here on my plan. That's wild rice. That's wild rice. And so where I live, my reservation, there's 47 lakes and 500 bodies of water, and there's a lot of wild rice. And so that grows each year in succession. You just got to take care of the lake. We do historically, and to this day, work on the water level. Sometimes we have like a little small dam or take out a couple of boards at the end to keep the levels up. But next picture. And this is a round lake where I live, Gawawi-Ikemug, which is the center of a huge ecosystem. It's the top of the Otter Tail River. Next with, this is my grandson and I harvesting wild rice on Shell Lake. And a lot of you have seen this, but we were discussing your wild rice out here. So this is in September on my reservation. He's pulling me, he's like a big dude now. And this is kind of a shallow bed that we're in, or it's like that. Sometimes there's a lot more out there, but you see I'm knocking it into my canoe, and as I knock it into the canoe, the rest of it goes back in the water, and so it reseeds. And so I think that's like an important, as people reestablish these, you gotta reseed in the fall, plant it in the spring, and then what we do when we're trying to add it back into a area, and there's so many different kinds, some's tall, some short, some's like bottle brush, some what looks like all poked out. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's biodiversity, which is what we're all talking about here. And that's why it survives, is because of that. But mud balls, that's what I was telling this team, is like you take a mud ball, because it's got a lamp on the bottom. And that's how it gets down there. So next picture. This is also part of all of our collective history. This is the one dish, one spoon wampum. And I bring this up because it's an important map, and it's an important covenant agreement. In this case, this wampum, very old, out from this area, but it's a treaty between the Anishinaabe, probably the Lenape, where they're at the table with us, and the Iroquois Confederacy. And we are, pounding each other up someplace, and this is called a one dish, one spoon treaty. And in this treaty, we agreed that we would, we came to an understanding, which is really the understanding that we all eat from one dish. And that dish is Mother Earth. That's our dish. We eat from one dish. And so, best to take care of a dish, right? And then the one spoon means, and a lot of you know this from ceremonies, you all use the one spoon. Or now you have like a sippy cup in the post-COVID era. But the idea is that in eating together, you're relatives. In eating together, you're relatives. And I think that part of that lesson, and this treaty I've been focusing in on it because I work in a tree museum that was actually funded in part by the Mellon Foundation. And that museum has this treaty and then this sweet corn treaty, really interesting, which is a treaty between us and the Dakota. I'm not really interested in the land stealing treaties. I'm interested in the agreements between indigenous people historically and presently to take care of our collective land and our collective well-being. And so those treaties are, that sweet corn and this one are two of those very important treaties. The Buffalo Treaty is a new treaty that has been signed by many nations, so we won't go too far into that. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is the section I call this Back When America Was Great section of, and I think that it's really important to remember, and certainly Lila June has helped in all of the writing, us to remember how wealthy and beautiful our land is back when America was great. 50 million buffalo transformed an ecosystem. The animals, lived on 250 different species of grass, didn't require a single bale of hay. transform prairies and transform ecosystems. And then when you return buffalo to those ecosystems today, you see the return of the ecosystem. You see the return of the plants that are supposed to be there. You see the return of the birds that are supposed to be there. So that's when America was great. 50 million buffalo. Next picture. 800, 900 species of potatoes. I'm a potato grower. I grow purple potatoes. That's my little specialty. But why would you want to grow just like Iowa Spuds? You grow with that cool collection of potatoes. That's for the Peruvian potato. But of course, potatoes indigenous to the Western Hemisphere, and really the biodiversity. And our potato family should have well taught us that you need biodiversity and agrobiodiversity to survive. So next picture. And some of our corn varieties. And I've probably grown about 17, maybe 20 varieties of corn. I didn't grow these. This is just a picture of really cool corn varieties. But, obviously all of that agrobiodiversity is so important. And I'll show some pictures later. But what I noticed is, like, you guys had very tall corn, and a lot of my corn is this tall. And all it needed was to put on a ear. It didn't need to get tall. It just had to put on an ear. And so corn has all this, biodiversity is so interesting in what it's supposed to do, and the purpose of it. So I was really interested in your blue corn. I grow blue corn too. I like the blue corn. See, I'm going to go on tangents about everything I grow here to feed. But, part of what I think is important is in the era of colonialization, or everything that we've gone through, people forget how America was raped, or how much biodiversity there was, and how much, beauty that, our ancestors created. Next picture. And this is just some art from our territory, but I really think that the idea that we are all in the same canoe, which is basically what this artist is saying, is very important. So we are all from different peoples and different ways, but, the fact is that not only historically, but now we're definitely in the same canoe. Although some people haven't gone, some of us have. Not that, but the point of the key is that the collective well-being of the future generations is really what the people working on. And so that's like this moment, a spiritual moment, where you have a chance to step up. So next picture, I'm going to talk a little bit about the prophecies. Now I'm the elder in training. That's what he said I was on it. I heard that there's like elders in denial. There's elders in training. And there's like junior elders, and then there's real elders. I'm like working on my way, but I definitely have more winners behind me than ahead of me. But when I was young, I had the privilege of hanging out with a lot of, and some of you, this is Tom Spanyaka from the Hopi, and I had a lot of, I spent a lot of time as a young woman listening to all these really cool people talk, and we didn't know what they're talking about exactly, but I just knew that I listened to him, and he's a good friend of our family. He's a good friend of mine. So this is the first PowerPoint. That's how I refer to this, which is little, like he brought around this little folded up tapestry. I don't know exactly how that was made back in the 70s, but there you go. That's what he had. And that's a Hopi prophecy, which is kind of in keeping with everybody's prophecies, which is there's a choice in paths. In our case, we call it the time of the seventh fire. When we're told that we have a choice between a path well-worn that is scorched and a path that is green. And it's our choice upon which path to embark. That's what they have always said about us as Anishinaabe people. But this is, a Hopi prophecy about this time. And there's a lot of prophecies. But in this, he's showing that there's the path where you stay on the earth. And then he says some of them guys go into space. And I was like, that's the Elon Musk path he's talking about. Because that's what he's basically talking about, is that he's, this whole transition time, and he also talked about he also talked about this time. He talked about a web in the sky. This was in the 70s, and those Hopi elders were talking about that there would be a new world coming when there was a web in the sky. And in the 70s, we didn't really think. I was like, what is that? It's like Star Wars, and what is a web in the sky? Well, here we are in the time of the World Wide Web. And that's exactly what those guys are talking about. And it is, in fact, you can see it like its emergence, its growth, the, restart of the nuclear power plant at 3 Mile Island by who's that, Google or Microsoft? What I'm saying is the insanity between its cryptocurrency and the oligarchs of the web in the sky, who have created a world that doesn't actually exist. but they had created this world that they believed that we should all be in some like really not great way, right? And so I just, none of us could get to that. None of us could even, but those elders, next picture, we're talking all about it, and here it is, and then this is like the energy use of these data centers, and I lived in in Northern Territory, Northern Plains, and they're talking about data centers there that, in North Dakota is just full of bad ideas, just full of bad ideas. It's like, I'd be probably like Alabama or Florida. I guess it was like, oh no, but they're like mini nukes by the Missouri River to power their data centers. I was like, what kind of idiocy is that, But this is, they're right. Those Hopis were absolutely right on how, AI or chat box, like those guys, they're talking about them being sentient. These AI is sentient, and they're actually issuing commands for national policy. I mean, they just issued a big set of commands for what the next the rollout of the internet, their new Marshall Plan is. And I was like, really? And it was delivered by AI. I was like, there you go. That's crazy stuff. So anyway, this is all the crazy stuff. But I just wanted to remember who we are. Remember, because there's a lot of historical amnesia in this country, and there's also ecological amnesia. And part of what I see happening here and by all of this is that we're remembering what's supposed to be there, and we're helping it come back, because we all know that there's a lot more power in that than there is in Elon Musk. He's just a little dude with bad ideas. You understand? Okay, so this is my father. His own Vincent Lajikudis and his son here. And he used to tell me a lot of silly things. He was a contemporary of all those dudes, and that's partially why I hung out with them all. But he used to say, he came to see me when I was a partner. I was an undergraduate. He got 8th grade education, guy, super smart, like, farmer, Indian man in the woods, But he used to say, he came to see me one time, he said, Winona, you're really smart. He said, he was super proud of your quick, but he's like, and I want to hear your philosophy, you can't grow corn. And I learned profoundly. I learned from that, but I think it's absolutely right. Is you could be smart as can be, but can you feed yourself? And then also the fact is that the plants teach you, and I think anybody who farms and grows all these different varieties knows that their plants will teach you. So he said that to me, and I learned more of that every day. I'm grateful to my dad who passed away, but he, left me those teachings. And then the next picture. And then he also told me that there'd be a day when there'd be no food in his store. And we saw it. We were in the Canada. You were about to see it again. And so I think that, those what they said, so what I'm saying is that we are living in a time of prophecies. That's what I'm saying. We are living in the time of prophecies. And in this moment, what is it that we are going to do? What is our piece in this moment? So next picture. It's kind of the conflict. And it's a long-standing conflict. It's not a new conflict. This is the two different worldviews, and one of them is going to work out, one of them ain't. And I think that you guys are on the side that, I know we're all betting on Sitting Bull there. But next picture. So a little bit about kind of our gardening. And okay, so we're talking about squash. This is the Gechea postman's call. It was gifted to me about 15 years ago, my first bees, and I grew up because after my dad said for corn before he bought corn for 40 years now. Yes, I got it, Dad. I'm working on it, man. Anyway, so, people start giving me different seeds, as I collected some today. Thank you very much, Nate, and I collected some Trapo seeds in the hills out west. But so someone gives me these seeds, and they said this really cool squash. And I said, well, where'd it come from? He said, well, it came from a parsological dig in Wisconsin. It was about 800 years old. They carbon dated it. It was in a clay ball in an archaeological dig in Wisconsin. So they jumped me up, and then I got some of the seeds, and they're quite prevalent, more prevalent now. And so a couple of lessons in that. One, clay ball. That seemed to work pretty well, right? I'm just saying they got that big seed bank up there in Norway. I don't know about that. The clay ball, that's your ticket. You know what I'm saying? Is community seed ownership or caretaking is really what we got to do. You cannot put all your stuff someplace, although I heard that the Grin Bank has all kind of cool stuff, and that's great, But we need to grow them out, because seeds need people. They need light. They need soil. They need love. they need to be eaten, they need to be feasted, or else they just become specimens, right? And so I started growing this out, and then someone actually sent me a picture of them, which is so funny that because he was talking about how people send in pictures of their plants. And I was like, yeah, I was to be too. They sent me, but look at this, I feel like a grandma. And I said, oh, look at that, it's so cute. No, they did. Oh, that's so neat. Anyway, so I started growing this out, and people were like, what's that called? What's that called? I said, I don't know what it's called. I just started growing it. And then I said, well, white guys name sip all the time. I'm going to name this one too. And so I named this one Gete Okosamen, which in Anishinaabe means really cool old squash. It's nice, And then I was laughing because I grow them, and then everybody asked me to buy them, and I don't sell seed, but I don't really have that together. But anyway, so they were always after me for the seed companies, and so last year I saw that in the Baker Seed catalog. It's listed as Gete Okosamen. I said, I guess people laugh. Like cool seed catalog. You're like, oh, there we are. But that's basically what it looks like. And then we got with the Lakota squash, but in my mind, that what makes a Lakota squash, those intermarriage happens. And anyway, so now I have this new squash, which is a Lakota squash, and this one, which really is a nice squash. It seems to be pretty sturdy in its representation. And we call that the Sneakhorn Treaty squash, because it's a Lakota and Ojibwe, which just through that, So we'll see. We're both of them now. Anyway, next one. And then this is us learning how to be horse farmers, all right? So this is technically a one-horse plow, walking plow. But I just want you to witness that this is a 3-person, 1-horse plow. So you gotta learn something out, right? You start one at a time, and that's my grandsons. And this happened during the pandemic, because all those kids moved in with me. I lived with like 8 14-year-old boys. I know. Do you feel, Marie? Yeah. I know. They ate so much, and they were so messy. But, they have all grown up to be farmers. And they never left the farm after COVID. Elijah, we're camping at Stan Dracky, camping on Line 3. So their horse guys are very good. Horse guys and are very good farmers. And, I realized, I think that maybe a lot of people realize the same thing, that my 401k ain't going to work out there. But I can raise farmers. That's worth something. And so that's what I really work on, is with a lot of these youth. But anyway, I just want to show you that, you say you do all this cool stuff, but really when you're doing it, sometimes it's way more, you're not as cool as the Amish, for sure. Nice picture. But speaking of which, this is my horses, and this is some of my corn. Now that corn is a Mandan corn, and it grew about this tall. And I want to say I've never had a crop failure with my Mandan corn or my Bear Island Flint. And it had the worst drought in the history of the state, which is when they put that Enbridge pipeline through, worst drought in the history of the state, that anybody could remember. And Monsanto's rice withered but one grew. And then I explained to my grandchildren, I said, that's what smart corn is like, because it figured out it grew like this tall, but it still had an ear on. So that's why we grow those crops, because those crops are intelligent and they adapt. That's why you need to grow. I have all your varieties out now. I really like to sit into the diversity of them. Okay, so this is the day that my horses were borrowed by my Amish neighbor. That's kind of a proud moment. They had their 4-horse operation there, and I'm the 2 on the outside. They were really getting schooled by the Amish horses, but nice picture. Yeah, I'm on a lot of work on the Amish. Okay, so this is not a pretty picture. This is my reservation. Those 2 red dots mark land that Lee holds. During Enbridge occupation, part of my therapy program was to purchase land, and so we did. So that's basically 320 acres. And then right above it is my tribe, both my village at Pine Point. Well, around it is Arnie Obatha, which is a big potato farmer. And what they are doing is egregious. They're doing aerial spraying, they're doing everything that you're not supposed to do, right? And so the question is, in this is what are you doing? I can't just do a little garden. I had to go big. I had to do a landscape style. Does that make sense? And so we bought combine. I never thought I'd be somebody that have combine. I got combine, and I got to get myself a grain truck. I'm doing hemp and sunflowers and nut fields. And then I said, hey, wait, let me just be honest. We did this. I don't operate any equipment. Smart guys, smart women operate equipment. I'm not mechanically inclined. But I can operate a horse. That's good. But anyway, so my point is that as a part of a strategy to protect your territory, this is our strategy kind of being laid out. That purple, she's coming into the fold. She's got all that land. She's a non-native woman who was left 900 acres by her parents, or she's organic. So I was like, work with your neighbors, and then this here, then that's Oppet, and the father is horrible math. He's a really mean guy. His name's Ron Oppet, largest potato grower in the country, and he's racist and hateful. Well, anyway, his daughter is not, and he's over. He's like all naive. So I'm like, I shouldn't say that, but I was like, come on, bro, look along. But anyway, his daughter, her name is Christy Oppet. Well, I met her actually in Santa Fe a couple of times. And I said, and I had her come look at my farm, and I showed her what her family was doing. And, and I said, she said, what do you want? I said, I want to buy that I want to buy that land across from my school so that my kids don't get swayed. And so for $500,000, I bought 160 acres, right? But, that's what we did. It would raise the money, thank gosh, for example, the lucky donor to help us. But when Mike Lee did that, McKee cried because they were going to get sprayed. Next picture. And then this is what our hemp looks like in our field. That's that same field. The school's behind it, and that's some of our girls in the field. Granddaughters, nieces. Next one.
Can you tell us about hemp and why it's good and awesome?
Huh?
Can you tell us about what hemp is used for and what?
Right, this is all these pictures. This is the hemp section of my speech.
Oh, these-
Yeah, if you guys know this copy yet, sorry I'm sure that I just smoke it, but I know we have a limited time anyway. This is one of my heroes, and it's Breon Lake, and he is taking hemp to grow a Sisyphus. And we're talking 50 pounds an acre. We're talking acres of hemp. I'm trying to get, we grew 60 acres of hemp. I'm going to try to put in 100 this year. 100 represents 30 houses. I just tell you that. That's what I'm talking about. 100 acres of hemp would be 30 houses. Maybe 20 houses. But, I'm just saying, I grow fiber hemp. You can see the fiber behind that was probably hand decorticated or with some you could see it actually, there's like a thing that goes like this. That's why they kept slavery so long, was that right there. And then they went to mechanical decortication. But next picture, this is what, hemp bioremediates because as fast as it grows tall, it grows deep. And so it pulls stuff up out of the soil, and I really am a big proponent of hemp for bioremediation. And there's a guy out here, Chief Richard Sillyboy, and he's from Aroostook, up in Maine, and they got returned to them, as usually it happens. They got returned to a military base that was full of persistent, whatever, those bad things, right? And so they've been using hemp to bioremediate it. And so I've been talking to a lot of communities that are facing the same kind of challenges, but it sequesters carbon at the highest rate at yield cloth, and it remediates. And the reason I'm saying that is that what we need to do now is keep our forests and sequester carbon, and that's what hemp does. Is it allows me to keep my forest because you don't use it for building materials and you don't use it for paper. And so this is I'm working now and organizing a cooperative of hemp farmers and hemp producers in my region. Next one. And this is a little bit of our, this is our field. This is some of my family in our field, our first harvest. And so you can see, if you're dumb enough to smoke that, it's like 0.3% THC.
We call that the 70s. That is speeds.
Yeah. It's this is not what you want to smoke, right? But you can see how tall it grows, and then the outside of it is the fiber that you use for textiles. The inside is what you use for building materials. And so I'm really, keen on tribes growing this because of our housing needs. And then the challenge is the next picture is the processing of it for textiles. Okay, so this is actually some of Ira's wool and my hemp. On that.
Oh, okay.
And that was at Batten Hill at Battenport Mills in New York spun that. Very expensive to spin, but so just to clarify, the word canvas came from canvas, which I didn't know until 10 years ago. And so what that means is that all those sales were hemp. Everything was hemp. And hemp uses about a quarter of the water of cotton, and it grows on weed. Figure that out? Cat. So this is the bag that we did with Patagonia. I should have brought my Patagonia bag, but I did it. And so hemp from my fields in Minnesota was harvested there, put in round bales, and then we shipped it to North Carolina to Bass Corps, who busted it up, and then they sent it to these guys in Virginia to degum, and then it was sent to Mexico after it was like degumming takes it's like a pectin. Lignin is what it's called. What's it called? Yeah. It's like a pectin that starch puts it together. Yeah, follow me kind of on this. It's like between the inside herd and the outside that holds it up. That you got to take off if you're going to cottonize it. I don't think you have to take it out before to get canvas. So it went to North Carolina, then to Virginia, then to Mexico to get spun. And then it went to Washington State to get woven. And then it went to California to get cut. And so it went into that bag you see there that category and delivered to the market 2 years ago. That's a really great story, and it's like proof of concept, right? But the point would be is at least to draw that on Minnesota. Minnesota had 11 hemp mills. Wisconsin had 9. North Dakota was, so we had a regional hemp textile economy that existed in this country that was deconstructed by, offshore textile industry. And in that process, we lost a huge, not just number of jobs, but we lost a plant that was criminalized, right, in 1938 that actually is the difference between a carbohydrate economy and a hydrocarbon economy. That's to say, the hydrocarbon economy is what we have as the fossil fuels economy. But everything you could do with oil, you could do with hemp. Everything in the materials economy, you could do. Right, and you can also use it for a fuel, but we don't even want to go down the path of, right? I'm not going to go into the discussion of what's the efficient use of energy, because basically I just flew across the country, right? The carbon footprint of choice of transportation, but relocalizing is really the central part of how we're going to survive. Relocalizing into these regional economies. So next picture. Oh yeah, that's our hempcrete house. It's one of my sisters in my addition. Now those panels, you can see them. It's super cool. Those are 6-foot wide panels of hempcrete. They were made in Bismarck, North Dakota, 4 hours away. Throw it on a semi. It's like sprayed in and hemp and live. And those panels were sprayed in. They brought them out. They put my walls up in 4 hours. So this is what I'm saying is like tribal housing or housing. You could do artisan work, but you could do that. And you can move those around. Tell people can move those around. They're not heady, And so those are, and you can see kind of their foot thick walls. And so they are fire retardant. They are mold resistant. They are super logged with thermal mass. But it's, what I'm saying is like this is what you want. This is the house of the future, and that's what I'm working on getting to in the region. I'm working on that like a few of our tribes in the region. Next one. And then this is kind of the question of, hemp versus cotton and hemp versus trees. So basically, I believe to save our biodiversity and to save our ecosystems, we turn to a hemp-based economy. And people say, I just want to grow hemp. I was like, no, you got to go as a crop rotation. An integrated cuisine here who does some farming knows that. And so you got to do it as a crop rotation with, you could do it with corn, you could do it with beans, you could do it with hay. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is because it takes a lot of, it doesn't take a lot of water, but it takes nutrients. You grow that tall that fast. It needs to have like a lot of nitrogen. And so this question of how you build soils or rebuild soils is really a question that we're all working on. Next one. I think I'm almost done with mine. Okay, there's my little cooperative, and that's our little model that my people grow. Doesn't that sound biblical? That's us out there, a Sisseton with our little revolution. Anyway, next one. And then, I don't know why that wasn't it. You can do that on the end stuff. But this is my village. And, I had a housing project that was built by Lyndon Johnson. You understand how old that housing project is? And so it's never repaired. And so we started taking her up. And, you have to, if you're going to live in that old housing project, well, actually, cool. Right, so I got about 8 girls on. I'm going to try to go for another 6 or 8 this summer. People are asking me, so that's cool, huh? My little hot trail hop. The next one, I think I should be close to done. Right. And so I just, I think that this is something that we all know. Is be the seed. You just see. I mean, it's such a, to me, like spring is coming And it is about this covenant that we have with those seeds. You know, it is this relationship and agreement we had. We take care of you. You know, we make sure you have what you need. And it's all about a promise. The seed is about this promise. And you know, anybody who gardens knows, like, you're not going to sure exactly what's going to come up. You know, you're going to do your best. And you know, the thing that we know is, you know, that our gardens are, you know, in our territories, we have our gardens, but, you know, each year is different. Each year is different. So sometimes it's great for tomatoes. Sometimes it's great for, you know, the squash. Sometimes it's great. But it's the same thing in our big world. You know, I mean, I had so much rain a couple summers ago after that horrible time I had with the pipeline. And I was like, I don't know if we're getting rain anything. Well, they might digest massive amounts of mushrooms, right? You know what I'm saying? Because that's part of who we are as Indigenous people, is if we are like on our land, a different thing will be offered. Something will be offered, and you have to be astute enough to know, you know, what it is, and then also to know what the chime is, you know, because this is Onabadis, this is the hard-crusted snow buoy in my territory. We just got a blizzard at home, but then we have our maple surfing moon that comes next. And how, you know, maple surfing moon is starting is you know, it says in our calendar, but also, you know, because the crows gather. And I don't know if you have that here, but you look and they're like, oh, there they come. You know, and then when the frogs come out, you're done. Right? But that's traditional ecological knowledge. You only have if you live there and you watch it. And then, you know, I'm going home and it's been a slow year so far, but some of those trigger pushes are like what Philo was saying. There's the only maple in there because my ancestors took out the other trees. You know, I mean, they left different, it's really cool medicines in there, but it's super interesting, like how we landscapes or how we, you know, that it is our garden. Everything is our garden, you know, and it could be the little thing that's in our garden, or it could be our ecosystem. And that's why even on moons, you know, maple surfing moon and Wawaganikisis, the flower moon, and then Odaminikisis, the strawberry moon, Yinkisis, blueberry moon, Bonominakisis, wild rice making moon. You know, we don't have a calendar based on the Roman emperor, you know, and most Indigenous people don't. And you know, they talk about Indian time. Well, I'd say Indian time is the time when that is dictated by that calendar. You know, and he said, he's not coming at me, he's sugary. That's what they'd say about, you know. And so I think that being back in touch with that is really how we're gonna be okay for a longer time. You know, is back in touch with that. And I think I said one last slide that says how you find me, which is that that word, that's what I work for. And I work for this little museum too. That's the local stuff. But Miigwech, thank you for your time.
Wow, that was so beautiful and so passionate for you to share those themes and those stories. One of us is a storyteller, should always work in others' book. And we're totally down to open it for questions if anybody has some for Walana. Comments, ideas, reflections.
Sir Talbert. Anybody else got cool seeds? Good trade.
My name is Joe, and I'm fascinated by a lot of things here today, but and how you actually I'll say manufacture, but literally take something from its raw form and construct it, make the ability to construct something larger from it and more and more. Who's doing all that? How do you get that done?
Was that
raw form to? Because there's a lot of steps in the whole well need to be right that you're using it for, what you want to do with it. How do you do that?
Yeah, that is the question. That is the puzzle. So I've had state and federal permits for 10 years. I'm the fighter for the state just legalized marijuana, so half the people just said we're going to burn marijuana. I said, that's great. That's not the revolution now. The revolution's in the hemp because it could transform the economy. And so when they criminalized it, they basically burned all the blueprints. That's what they did, and they eliminated most of the species except for some of these spirophores, and then they have a few here. But so we've been watching this like smart guys that fill around with equipment. They drink a cotton gin, and they what I'm saying is that they took other equipment out. The truth is that China, in France, in Belgium, like Belgium never lost its linen industry. Right, linen is complex, right, and it's very similar set of equipment. France has 7 hemp mills that do textile work. So I'm probably have to go over there and see what they got. But we're looking with, but we did work with these guys at Bassport in Alabama. Figure that out how to, basically hammer mill. Does that make any sense to you? Like a hammer mill is what they use to get stuff with that. A hammer mill byproduct won't give you the textile quality that we want, and it's also dirty. And so you need to get So I'm on the puzzle of the AZAP technology, but we prototyped one, and then we just got from these, like I said, from Babcor, you could get decorticated, and you might be able to get it degummed so it's softer, but then who the hell is going to spin that, right? And so our first one, we should have had IRA, the Navajo farmers up there, because IRA's downright these Dene farmers, those guys, I was like, who do I know that beefs? The Navajos, right? And so they spun. And they made really great textiles up. Because I've come from the textiles that would give away people by and large would be deer hides. Why would you go spinning when you got there's your dress right there? What I'm saying is that their technology of their churro sheet and ours, in hand spinning, has created this beautiful set of artisan work. Now, since I'm the scaled revolutionary, I got to figure out how to do it bigger. And so that is the place that we are at now, is getting the appropriate equipment and then also locating it appropriately. Because, I was talking just yesterday and the day before this with some of our people, and they're like, oh, you could go to this facility. I was like, the point is that I don't want my BLs that far. I want to do a set of regional facilities that are replicable with the appropriate technology and the appropriate scale for, 500 to 1,000 or maybe 2,000 acres. Or 3,000, but I'm not going to be 50,000 acres. All of China's hemp production of textiles is 72,000 acres is all that China produces, which is super interesting. It's not even, it's an entirely new economy. It doesn't exist. The hemp textile economy, the hemp economy does not exist in this country. And so that's why I'm really a proponent of getting people to the table and getting us to know the technology. Yeah, but I don't got an easy answer on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I'm from an urban area, and we do urban farming and community gardening, and it's growing. South New Jersey is one of New Jersey's designated food desert area. Food equity is other people who live in Byron City and are experiencing. So they're a great network of us in those counties and down there. It's not our farms, very large farms, but in the urban areas, is there a practicality to try to introduce what you just described within an urban area? For instance, we're trying to repurpose vacant city blocks that are destitute or not being built, be it held by people that could be more casino, whatever, to a small scale of an operation like that, just to introduce the community to the fact that these technology and these style are artisan crafts exist.
Yeah, hemp is something that you're gonna want. They need to be planted no close to each other, so they grow tall. Otherwise, they'll grow bushy. And then so that's one thing. The other thing is that people who grow marijuana don't like hemp. Because it's all kind of sex going on. And it messes up there, I'm like, what's your plan? I've been here and those are male and female plants in that field, in my fields, it's, male and female plants, but, and it's super funny to watch. It's like, at the end of the season, just to say, because we're all adults in here, is that at the end of the season, the males are exhausted and withered. Look at you, what's that? Already not. That's so interesting, but it's such a female thing. That's something that really interests me, is it? Because a lot of the lessons are in FINAP, you know? But the man, I already has part in this here, man, the ball and everything. So I think it's a really good plan to grow. I think that it's also good to grow to kind of like get the life back in, and it goes deep down into a lot. You know, put a lot of, you know, nitrogen fertilizer on there, but, you know, it is good. And then after that, you know, maybe plant some other stuff in there, depending on what bigger lies. And then that, you would just hand decorticate and make rope out of it. You know what I'm saying? And you just twine it, you know? So that's what I would do with something like that. And then, but besides that, it's really, yeah, it's a beautiful plant, as you see, and it has a really interesting, you know, good samples. And bees love it. I mean, it's a really good pollinator too. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Any other? Yeah. Let me go to Coker.
Hi. So the root systems of hemp, how big is, I mean, you say it goes deep, so how thick are the roots? Do they get really big? Or are
Thank for all the Jim Price biggest line kicker. You know, but they're, I mean, it's because if you're gonna hold up something like that, you gotta have strong roots, right?
Right.
But so that's how you kind of figure it out. It's like the height, you know, it's like, but that's why sunflowers are good for bioremediation too. Because anything that's that high is sequestering a lot of carbon because it's sucking it down, and it also has to have deep roots to be able to you know, keep it standing. So it's not, there's like a root ball. You know, in my fields, not big root ball, but if I grow a CVD variety, big root ball, you know. So, but it's really, I think just in the depth is, you know, part of its magic. Yeah.
Can I just follow up on that? If you're doing crop rotation, how difficult is it to take that healthy root system out for the next crop?
Well, hemp, so first of all, the combine, that's a vendor. And so I have combine with a fighter cutter on it, which takes the seeds off, which we just started, you know, Cabaccus late, there's a seed shortage. If you need to grow a lot of hemp, it doesn't exist. I mean, we're importing from the Baltics and the Czech and the French, you know. So I want my own seeds. That's what I'm working on, is the seed varieties with the wild hemp or the farrow varieties that are here, right? But then the other parts cut the fiber. It cuts it off, and then so it doesn't have like and since it doesn't reproduce from the roots, it's not gonna come back, but it will come back, you know, because it is really, that call it for nothing. You know, it'll come back, you know, and so you got it. And then the second year, because I've done this, and I was like, oh, look. And it's just not as strong or robust, you know. But I think if I'll probably go clotting on this, put a lot more fertilizer on and see how she comes, because it does like reseed. But you can, you know, you're doing cultivating. And then you plant it like just like that far from the top. It's not a deeply planted seed. It's very close to the top. And then it's roots go down. It's super interesting. You know, if we plant them real close together, and that way it carpets the area when they're, like you saw in that one picture that it carpeted it. And so you don't have any weeds, you know.
We had a question from Coker. Yeah, yes. From G. Coker, that is.
Thank you. Question, is hemp still illegal, bro?
No.
It is not.
No, it's under the Farm Bill in 2014.
Okay.
Oh, back. Yeah. But not even, you know, but then, like, this last year, it passed the U.S. building codes. You know, because when I was doing this, you probably gathered from me is like,
What does that mean? Right.
no, I don't really care. I mean, that's, like, you know, so we built the Sap Creek house, and then now it's at the U.S. building codes, right? And then it just got legalized for chicken feed. But you can't feed them the seeds, you have to feed them like a meal. And it's really a high amino acid. It's a really good food. And so, and that was just legalized, but it's just emergent. It's legalization. And it's also, if you're over 0.3%, which is a totally BS level. I mean, because, you know, I was talking about before, like, why would you smoke my 0.3% hemp? You know, but
that's illegal. It's supposed to be under 3, and so all of that has to be challenged. And I think that's one of the roles of universities, as well as tribes, is to keep pushing back on, because there's really no purpose to criminalize that plant for being, 1% THC. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Great. And just to add to what you're asking, Chief Coker, so it is federally legal, but it is also still starting to regulate it, right? And states also regulate that. So in the case of yourself, like us, we would then, if Delaware, right, has a hemp program, right, in the Department of Agriculture, what you would need to do is to go to the Department of Agriculture online. They do that hemp program, then you will have to go through their process of getting a license, right? And then that would allow you, for us in the state of New Jersey, our hemp license allows us to plant, grow, harvest, process, right? Regardless if it's a plant for medicinal value or it's a plant for bio, right? So that's just something to keep in mind.
No, there's just don't mistake it. I refer to it as white people paperwork. It is exhausting. It is exhausting. I mean, they're trying to stop you, but in Minnesota, because I stuck with it and they stayed oh good. And the feds even I got a better permit and she's like, oh, you're growing fiber? I was like, yeah. They're kind of excited because they did so punishing. And so nobody really got into it, but this transformational ability is so significant. So I think that, you're just going to keep waking them up and just keep growing, Yeah.
We had a comment here, and then maybe yours, and then we'll move on to our next process.
It just to further ask the question about the farming technique. When you do harvest and you do go to crop rotation, are you churning those roots back in, or are you not totally removing them to plant on next crop?
Or tiller.
Yeah, tiller.
Or chilling. I mean, I didn't, we have tractors, we have tractors. You saw my horses. And, so I probably do a combination of all of that, and out. But, we do some no-till, and I lectured Three Sisters. I was like, oh, that's a big Three Sisters patch. That's a lot of work in there. So we do all kinds, but this one here, you want a blanket, and so you want to get it in there because that's how it turns into the tall guys that you want. Yeah, it's super interesting to learn about. No.
You have a comment?
Well, I was just going to make a point, but just if I recall correctly, there were 18 states that USDA covered, or the opposite. But I know if I wanted to work with hard juice, send down for processing to a different state. Both parties are both states. So in New Jersey, we're going to do something in Florida. A fellow in Florida, if I receive it, also had to be licensed by the state. We had to be the cross-state lines. What are you doing when it gets from point A to point B? What form will it be in? Where else will it go? Are they licensed? Do they have their own license? It was a little more complicated than I would have imagined. And say, I would talk about starting. That's even talking about it was for the purpose of that, no possibility, but it was different oversight, and it was more.
But it's moving, and there's all these really tough old dudes, basically. I go to these hemp conferences, and there's these guys that have been committed to it, and I. All pans up for them, because they just stuck with it. And they're I go to North Dakota, there's some cool German dude who's he takes Dr. Berner's soap is grown and processed in North Dakota. And that guy is the sweetest dad guy, and he's the hemp dude. But he's been at it he's 80 years old, and he's been at it for 40, but a lot of it's there, but the processing of the textiles, that is just nascent. And that's part of, that's what I want to see in months. And I will see it in my lifetime. We did the one back from Patagonia, and I was like, we're going to do a project with some Navajo with the eighth generation with Arjun Abel, this time. But I'm ready. I'm just so ready to see it.
It was the fellow from the state, I think it was the DEQ, I forget what agency, who was in charge of the hemp program, who told me that hemp was naturally stronger than virtually all other fibers. They've been fibered less. He said it is stronger, and he told you Henry Ford built a car chassis out of hemp in the 1830s.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, because, like, all these big, I can't remember where I saw where they made ropes on one of these, like, Portsmouth or something, and that was all had rope. All the sailing ship stuff was, all the hanging ropes were required to be up. And that's what they weren't thought. But that's because it's the strongest fiber, and I think that's, it just, and then that's why you can also make, what's that stuff called? Rebar out of it. Rebar. Right. Yeah, just think about that place in Florida that they had all that metal rebar that just eroded. Got the and so up there's like little pockets like that, but that industry really needs to be capitalized as champions, need to be supported. And just imagine you could grow your next economy. I mean, you could grow all of that stuff, So I just think it's, okay, you guys already heard how, don't shut up. What is it? Anyway.
Well, no, you're fine. I'm rolling with it. Yeah.
I didn't get to ask any question.
Oh, okay, hold on her wait. Sorry, Chief Ann didn't get to ask any questions.
Yes, my sister here. My question is, how do we, as indigenous communities across Carolina, work together and come together to see that vision put forth, right? So we obviously are in this very industrialized area. State of New Jersey a year ago, the governor put out that he wanted to see hemp for fibers become, this thing. And so Rutgers, where Oscar works, they are the state ag, right? Extended part of the Department of Agriculture for the state of New Jersey. And so I began to ask those questions, and the questions that I was asking was like, all right, so the state of New Jersey is going to say, hey, here's, 10 million seed, and I would go find a place to grow. And they're like, oh, well, it doesn't really work that way. And what I really found out is that New Jersey doesn't necessarily want to be able to be the ones to grow that fiber, but they really want to be the ones who are actually doing processes of that, right? So here in the Northeast, we could put a processing facility on an acre, right? Quarter acre, half acre, or whatever. What we don't have access to here, right, is that 60,000 acres of land. And so I could envision, right, that a trucking company that is cooperatively owned between all of us Native Americans who are going to be a part of the larger focus of hemp-growing instantiation of different people. That, simply put, you guys have much land, and all of the other tribes that are coming this way, right, have much land according to do those things. And we have the ability to provide, the resource to actually do that processing of those things, right? We have access to the markets that all of those things really get to. Because, I don't want to grow something, make something, and try to do. I'm going to get that to you, right? But I don't need it. And so we as indigenous people need to utilize the colonial system, right, to extract the things that we need as people, right? And so how do you see making that a reality? And then just to throw one other thing in there, like Lee and I this year, last year, created the New Jersey Hemp Growers Association, right? There are only 38 people with hemp licenses in the state. Only 30 of those people are growers. And this year, no doubt, that number is even going to go lower. When I look at what we have as capabilities for land in which to grow on, we need your voice, right, to work with us and Rutgers and the state of New Jersey to make it so that we can grow hemp fiber on these lands that Mahisa, and Nova, New Jersey, PASA are helping us to take the state land and change that back to natural growing, right? Conventional way to grow. they're resistant to that, right? So in a roundabout way, that's, what because I've been talking with you about this
Yeah.
for quite a while.
I do think that everybody needs a facility. That's what I think. Because it's, a Vail, you don't want to move Vail here. What you would book here is that, 70% of the Vail is the curd, which is what you use for housing. So you want to get that someplace, right? And then move less, and then maybe there's cars like Mercedes guy in there, for insulation, you know what I'm saying? There's a value-added processing that could be done in a far more industrialized area. Because I don't want to get into that. I'm like all about the energy question. So I'm like, can I power my handmill on wind? That's my question. You know what I'm saying? Is that's the energy question. I think we all got to be asking is what's your energy load, and what's the relationship between that? And so, but I think that we do need a national. We need national. We need candidates. There's a lot of tribes out there like Saskatchewan and Alberta that are doing that, and everybody has their spot, because you guys also have, a lot more for the medicinal plants. You have more, and a market for that. But I think the future is, it's the new green revolution. Everybody say that like 3 times, the green revolution. Because I really think that it's so transformational, and we want to be at the table. That's what you're saying. But I'm not going to, us talking to Shide River Truck, they got like 2 million acres of land, and they got half, but at least out to non-native farmers. I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
You're super.
Things actually be the change.
Yeah, we need to set the table.
That's correct.
I need to do the lobby. I think that's what hemp does, for a lot of these places. And I just see, I see it as a really good strategy for land back in my region. If you can have farms that I can't tell a farmer to grow. I could tell a farmer, you should try it, and you should figure it out, but you're not going to want to grow it until they got the process it free. So I'm trying to work on this. There's a facility in Bryce-Sisseton that I think could do a lot of usage.
Yeah, and also to what you were saying, I liked it earlier this morning, that this whole entire facility right there is a running walk. No, and you have to hang with the sun, right?
And you don't need for 4,000 acres soil, you get a pretty decent sized facility that you get, what I'm saying? So it's not like I just said 70,000, that's all in China. And I'm saying, 1,000 acres to 3,000, 750 acres I heard is what hemp wood has for maybe 750 acres, but you have it a crop rotation, right? So you're doing you know what I'm saying? So that's why you're sitting a cooperative, because you could have a group of farmers that you could pick up the bales and process it to maybe to the end of measure. Right. And they could only put up, 40 bales, so maybe they could put up 100 bales. Super interesting puzzle. So anybody want to come hang out in northern Minnesota and work on the puzzle? Buffalo this great.
Not in the middle of the winter, but yes.
So thinking about how it's been used as a building material, or how it's been recognized as a building material, and also as that fiber, has it been recognized as insulation as part of that building material? And what's the R value? How is it especially with Minnesota winters, how is it with insulating structures?
Yeah, the hemp makes camp insulation. But I think that today surplus wool, this is what I thought they should do down there, because if you have wool camp insulation, then you're probably in a much better R value.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
The R value, if you got a foot thick wall, you got a foot thick wall, and it's it's good in there. I'm just so I think that it is used already as an insulation. It is, but all of that industry is just brand. It has my chicken coop hemp insulation in it. And they're happy. But people, fiberglass is not something you want to wrap for your animals. And so it can replace fiberglass, which is a good,
Thank you. And
so it's we're done.
No, I would rather go on and on actually, because this is for you guys, not for anything else.
I think this is a good segue though, because we're going to basically go into a very quick process of
hearing from this group, I think it is actually a really special moment that we're all sharing here. To have the elders and the young people together of this land with so many allies and partners as well, to have, the people here who were first experienced colonization, and that you're still here, talk about resilience, the strength of your people. As a Dene person, I'm extremely honored, literally, just to be in your presence and all the traditions and the value systems that each of you are carrying on. Not just the chiefs here, but every single one of the young people here, and everything that you're carrying forward is honestly, it's extraordinary, and I deeply keep me honored and so grateful that Duke Farms would link arms with you, because that's what we need right now. We need alliances. But in that spirit and in that same vein, we want to hear from all of you, because we do feel like this is a special moment and a special opportunity to look towards the future and perhaps conspire and co-conspire about what types of dreams is this group seeing, so that the various allies, leaders, supporters like myself, Nagisa, whomever in the room can start thinking about ways to bring these visions to life. So perhaps you can see this question on the board, perhaps you can't. We're entering. Okay, so Nagisa is wise to say, let's take a picture real quick before you smoke a cigarette. And no, just kidding. If we could all line up, right? Speaking of, this day in a special moment, but let up if folks, if you guys want to be in the picture, please line up on this line. We're gonna have this tree background behind us, and maybe some of this part of the wall too, and back here. So we want to take a picture, and then we'll do our process of popcorning, sharing ideas, and we'll write them down. What kind of future we want to create together. So if people don't mind coming to this side of the roof.
And trying to get, because we know we're going to lose them back. Please.
Everybody. Don't be afraid.
He did. It's just because it's just us. Everybody, that's very much.
Everyone's invited.
Need help to write.
You don't support the that. Wow, good stuff.
Speed. Oh, come on, Miss Julia.
Right, I know this is kind of like it's nobody involved.
It's okay. Ines, let's sit up.
Oh, yeah. All right, everybody, you're ready. Everybody look here and say peace. Video one more time.
Why no?
Thank you guys. Please stage with that. We really are excited to this next process, next step. Especially as Anape people's AC to champion to draw the blueprint together.
Yes. Oh, do you want my phone, Oscar? a line. Oh, because you have a phone number for him on that? No.
Oh, yes, I got some. Okay. Make sure you have to use it, bro.
I'm willing to try to. We actually produce it through stuff. See it created and I know what it is. So, excuse me. See, the never young students around. Ce sont vraiment des ensembles.
Really, sir, that's
Time to get.
See, sleep.
Usually, you have to sleep. Sleep. I mean, you like super high peppers. You do like Roman, great stuff.
Here, actually, I have a Guatemala to be planted, built up. Scared and it does say you better not squat. Oh, and that's got a ghost story. That I went for year 2 there, I bet.
That's what I got right now.
Oh, that's great.
Enjoy it.
Okay, thank you. Very nice to me. That's good to you.
You know, we down to our cars.
You only break kids who walk. Who's